Behold, it's Natalia. Let's go find some monkeys, shall we?
Would you say sex is like riding a bicycle?
Nothing gets me going like Christmas and wigs. Let's check out this show.
I remember the first creature I beheld. He was a squirrel. His name was Kevin.
I heard you need a DNA sample.
I want to find light and joy in things that bring us together and unite us. And I think science is something that can unite us. Ow. God damn.
There's a world out there, a world that needs to be beheld.
Hello. Okay. Hello, everyone. Behold, welcome to another episode of Survival of the Filthiest. I'm your host, Natalia Reagan. I'm a biological anthropologist and comedian, and I created this show because what the futz is happening? Honestly, folks, we have a war on science, healthcare, DEI, people of color, gays, bays, jetways, veterans, queers, engineers, the vax, paperbacks, teachers, creatures, national parks, and women. So what better way to resist than to talk to scientists and comedians, activists who are doing groundbreaking work and creating some good trouble to move this country forward rather than 5,876 steps back. As for the name, sometimes you got to get a little dirty to survive. And here's a quick reminder to please like, subscribe, and comment if you enjoy this show. And if you want to help support the production of the show and my other SciComm work, please consider joining my Patreon. Well, folks, Happy Women's History Month, if we can still say that. By the way, this is a no turf, so this is a very inclusive Happy Women's History Month. Women, we make up 51% of the population, but only make 84 cents for every dollar earned by a man. And because women were largely not allowed to be used in medical studies until 1993, so much is still not known about women's bodies, especially when it comes to our health and physical activity. Fortunately, the winds of womanly change are coming. No, not that change, although I hope there is more research on menopause moving forward. The change is there are more women and diverse voices in science. And this will benefit all fields, especially those studying the past, because we can't understand women of the past if we don't understand women of the present. And if nobody wants to study women of the present, we will continue to be an enigma. So having more women and non-binary folk science means asking questions that have long been ignored, like, did women hunt in the before times? No, not pre-COVID, but way, way, way back times, as in the Paleolithic era, starting about 2 million years ago. So we first got to address the original answer to the question. So this symposium, Man the Hunter, was in 1966, and it was organized by Richard Lee and Irvin DeVore. This led to a book published in 1968 by the same name, and it created a whole ideology that men hunted and women, well, did not. Maybe a little bit here and there. And even though new evidence has been gathered in the last 50 years, including many ethnographies featuring women hunting, it's often been ignored. So fortunately, my guests today, Dr. Cara Lacy and Dr. Cara Ocobock, decided to reevaluate the data and to bring it up to date. So let's give a little backstory to both of these wonderful guests. Dr. Cara Ocobock is the director of Human Energetics Laboratory at Notre Dame. Her research programs integrate human biology, anthropology, with a focus on the interaction between anatomy, physiology, evolution, and the environment. She explores the physiological and behavioral mechanisms necessary to cope with and adapt to extreme climate and physical activity. Dr. Cara Lacy is an assistant professor with the Department of Anthropology at the University of Delaware. She's a biological anthropologist specializing in paleoanthropology and bioarchaeology. Her latest project explores the reliability of bony indicators of respiratory health, their presence in ancient populations, and how they might correlate with oral health. Welcome so much, ladies. I am so excited to have you here. Oh my goodness.
Hello, Ray.
Hello.
Natalia. It's so good to see you. I feel like it's been eons.
It's been a few years. Yeah, and gosh, I don't even know where to start, honestly. Cara, you just got back from Finland. How are you feeling?
Like I said when we were chit-chatting, I'm okay right now. In 2 hours, I could be a puddle of goo on the floor, but for the moment, I'm good.
Don't worry, all of us are already a puddle of goo on the floor these days. Sarah, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Luckily getting to work from home today.
That's fantastic. Now, I just want to know, because I think a lot of people, I like to know their stories. How the heck you got into anthropology, specifically paleoanthropology, and sort of the intersections of, you know, human biology, the past, present, and, you know, looking towards the future. Whoever wants to answer first, we could Rochambeau it or fight to the death.
Fight to the death, to the death.
Yes.
Sarah, since you mentioned paleo and specifically, Sarah, how about you go first and then I'll tie
Sure.
in.
Sure. Like, how did I get here? Well, I think maybe a lot of us have these stories of like having like a particularly charismatic faculty member early in our lives that really kind of like set us on the path. I think I had wanted to be an anthropologist since I was a little kid. You know, my parents still have artwork where I have like Egyptology terribly spelled, and uh, it's something I just like kept coming back to, and then eventually realized like, oh, everyone says you can't get a job with this, but I've never wanted to do anything else, right? Um, but Trent Holiday at Tulane I took his Neanderthal class, and it just like was incredible. And you know, set me on this path where now I'm studying Neanderthals.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's a great thing to study, quite honestly. There's a lot of evidence out there, right?
Oh gosh, well, and I'm very biased. Like I think they're just like so fascinating, but clearly I'm not the only one because like it keeps all the time. There's some Neanderthals discovery, and it gets like a write up in the New York Times. Like people are really fascinated by these individuals, and we could get into like the whole history of how Neanderthals have been portrayed, like as our ancestors, as not our
Rude.
ancestors, all these sort of
Yeah.
things. But we're clearly really fascinated by them.
Oh, well, we're gonna talk a little bit more about them in a little bit because I have questions. Now, Cara, what's your origin story?
No, my origin story is actually a little more depressing, so I'm going to bring down the mood. Sorry, everybody.
That's okay.
It starts high up, and you know, similar to Sarah, I was totally that kid who had like the hieroglyphic stamp set and was obsessed with Henry Carter and the Tomb of Tutankhamun, all that stuff. But then I shifted to what I'm sure so many people do, to a pre-med track when I was in college. And I was like gung ho full onto that. However, in my junior year of college, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. And from diagnosis to when she passed was 4 months. So it was this very rapid thing. And it was, I think, my first real experience with the healthcare industry and how patients are treated and families are treated and what doctors encounter on the daily. And from that, I knew this is not it for me. I don't want to be a part of that environment. I don't think I could emotionally handle it, especially, the emotions were very raw at the time for me. And that semester, while things were happening, I was taking an anthropology course. And the professor for that course was the only one who actually seemed to care that my mother was dying. The rest of them didn't give a damn that I was going through this. And I thought, right, I'm going to take some more of these classes and see where it goes. And so, speaking of Neanderthals, Milford Woolpuff was one of those professors. Yeah, I know. I'm like, one of the Milford children. And I took every single class he had to offer. And that got me super interested in paleoanthropology. But I also kind of realized that that's not what I wanted to study. I didn't want to study fossils in particular. The whole pre-med part of me still loved the human body and how it works and what it can do. And so I started out wanting to do biomechanics, and then biomechanics of orangutans, by the way.
Oh.
I know. My personal
Tell me more.
I can't because I didn't study it, so I know nothing. But that was like my application essay to grad school, was to do orangutan biomechanics. And then I decided to do human energetics along the way, which is what has taken me along this route of humans in extreme conditions, in particular extreme cold, which is why I just got back from Finland.
Oh man, there are more humans than orangutans. Good choice.
Action with orangutans makes me think they are far more cooperative than most humans. So
yeah, I don't know. They're very mischievous, but at the same time, I don't know. I feel like they're also a very, very docile side to them. And you two met in, I believe, it was at WashU in graduate school, right?
Yeah, I was supposed to do like Homo erectus energetics. That's like where we were intersecting. And then I was like, energetics are really not my thing. Like, let me go back just to the fossils.
Dead things.
But, we still had, offices down the hall from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. And did you collaborate? Didn't you collaborate on a paper before the work that you did now, or is this the first time?
We did the Neanderthal paper together first.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
did what the thermoregulatory energetics, cold adaptations, Neanderthals kind of big review paper.
No, I love the fact that you kind of combine your two passions, again, like the intersection of like how the present and the past can sort of, inform each other, which is, I think, fascinating. And women, the hunter, how did that come to be? Was there an aha moment for you?
So yeah, it started a bit with me, and then me realizing there's no way in hell I can address this on my own, especially given the archaeological record. I don't know that shit, and Sarah does. But it was kind of two things that came together for me. One was on a personal level. I'm a former power lifter, and the things that would be said to me in the powerlifting gym, like everything you can imagine, it was said to me. But also these things would come through about some really interesting stereotypes, like don't lift too heavy or your boobs will shrink. And, just this idea of what lifting does to women and how women can lift versus what it can do for men and how men lift. Like I had no clue where these stereotypes were coming from. And at the time I was gearing up to teach exercise physiology. And so I just right, I'm going to make a unit about this stuff in class, so I might as well dig into the literature. And then more than anything, like you said at the top of the show, just studies don't really exist on women in these spheres. You get more in terms of endurance, but not much, basically, in when it comes to exercise physiology and biomechanics. So often women are just treated like little men. And therefore all the prescriptions for diet, exercise, training, sleep, recovery, all of that is just like lower the dose and make it pink and you'll be good to go. And so there are these stereotypes that are everywhere, and for the most part what data we have doesn't really back it up. So that was kind of part one of just me personal in that little journey. And then attaching it to the man the hunter, woman the hunter idea came from teaching here at Notre Dame. I have my students do an online dating profile for the hominin of their choosing. So like
Oh, I love that.
if Homo erectus joined Tinder, what would Homo erectus Tinder profile look like? They're all fucking hilarious, and it is the most enjoyable assignment to read ever. But in a class that was, I would say, at least 75% women to 25% men, almost every single profile was done from the point of view of a man, even when it was women making the profile. And I was just like, what is this? I didn't say anything at the time. And then I taught it the next semester, same thing happened. And then the next semester, same thing happened. I'm like, right, I'm going to call these little shits out. And by calling them out, I'm also calling myself out, because it means I'd been presenting a view of human evolution from a male perspective this whole time and not giving them the view from the female perspective. And so it was shining a light on my inadequacies as much as the inadequacies of the theory to begin with.
It's just wild because of the no, go on.
Oh, and then it's like, I was thinking about this. I'm like, I need to write something about this. And I started, and then I realized I cannot talk about this archaeological evidence. And I know Sarah knows this stuff so well. And so I'm like, hey, Sarah, do you want to do paired talks at the AABA?
Well, I remember that I actually read a number of papers where they were making the assumption that the gender division of labor must have decreased into agriculture because it must have been so high in the past. And I was texting Carol, like, look at this fucking paper. Like, I know some of these people. I can't believe they're saying this stuff in their pieces. This is ridiculous. And like bitching about it to her. And then, it was like kind of these light bulbs going off of like, oh, wait, like we could, like, clearly there needs to be a paper to correct these people. One, Kara's already thinking about some of these ideas. I have all this expertise that like complements it. Like, we already have written a paper together that came out really well and has been heavily cited, and we know that we work together well. Like, let's do it again.
Oh, this is great.
No, it's fun working with your friend.
It is.
Yes. I mean, because it's a lot of collaborative work, and if you don't jive well together, that's tough,
Mm-hmm.
So, and you guys play very well tell off of each other. I mean, I know you in real life, so I can see, the friendship it's real. You're not faking. You're not phoning this one in.
Wait till I start sending backstabbing text messages.
Right.
Never backstabbing. I do get the text message like, "Hey, you said you were gonna get a draft to me," and I'm like, "Oh shit."
Yeah, that's on me right now. I'm the one who's behind. So.
There's always one. It's funny that the whole presenting hominins as males, because I mean, who is the famous hominin out there?
Lucy.
What the heck? Like, what the heck? Like, why? I don't, it's so great. I mean, even Mrs. Please, which I now think is Mr. Please, but still, it's like, are you going to bring out Lucy? Are you going to
bring out the one physical online dating profile that I do have one. The student made a physical one, not a digital one.
That is me. Oh,
and you can swipe through pictures.
It's Boise. Is this Boise Eye? Is this my boy? It's my Boise Eye. OH5, baby. I actually have a solid gold one back there. I have a 3D printed one that was a Valentine's gift. No, I do a show called Survival of the Filthiest, a live show, and I did a Tinder game where I brought people on stage and they had to pick who would they it was who would you rather hot hominin edition, which I want to give a shout out to Sarah, because you had hot hominins when you were teaching at Dominguez Hills.
Yeah, it was really an outfit of the day Instagram account more than anything, but showcasing different important hominins. There was also kind of a thirst trap. It's questionable decisions were made.
You know what? At this point, whatever gets people going, whatever gets, like, one of my favorite things I ever saw during the whole, when the postal service was losing money, somebody tweeted, "We got to sexualize the postal service." You know what I mean?
Shorts shorter. There you go.
But I digress. I want to hear your arguments, because in your papers, you talk about women the hunter, the physiological, and the archaeological evidence. Now, whoever wants to go first, and because I know that, one of you presents more of the physiological and one presents more of the the archaeological. Yeah. Tell me your arguments, because they're fascinating, they're wonderful, and I'm very excited.
Well, I think actually it kind of makes sense for you to go first, Cara, because we had originally thought about this as a one giant idea, but there was so much to cover that it made sense to kind of turn it into two papers. And they're intended to be read together, right? Like, here is the physiological evidence, and your automatic question away from it is okay, but then what is the evidence in the past? And then the second paper, right, the archaeological evidence, then kind of answers all those questions. If you only read the first one, I think you get a good story, but it's incomplete. So I think it makes sense for Cara to go first.
It's a good point. That's a very good point.
And by the way, Peter has shared the article in the chat.
Thank you, Peter.
Read the articles. No, I gave people homework. I said, please do not make decisions until you read these articles, folks.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Given all the social media backlash, no one has read the fucking articles without opining on the situation. Right. So I want to go back to a moment to Man the Hunter, and it's two particular chapters in the edited volume. The one by Washburn and Lancaster, and then the one by Laughlin. That it is not just Man the Hunter, and it was only the men that did hunting, but that it was hunting that is what made us everything we are today, that it was the key evolutionary pressure that we evolved to be able to fulfill this sort of hunting style of life. And a lot of this revolves when women are mentioned, it's gathering is mentioned, and it is talked about as being important, but it's viewed as less important and lesser, and that women could not have hunted because they were not physically or psychologically suited for it. There's even this line that going after, food sources that can't run away is better for, the female temperament and physiology. Crazy shit.
Wow.
It goes back to the wandering uterus causing women's problems, and women shouldn't ride in trains or their uterus will fly out of their bodies. Insane shit. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to tackle the physiological perspective, because it was based in this idea of inherent female biological inferiority, that they didn't have the speed and they didn't have the strength and they didn't have the stamina to be able to hunt. And, this again goes back to that exercise physiology and the kind of stuff that I would hear in the gym or, read anywhere else. And I wanted to actually look at, there are average biological differences between women and men. I'm not here to say there aren't. There absolutely are. There are average differences in height and weight and strength and all of those things. But when it comes down to it, it really doesn't end up making a difference in the style of hunting that we've been talking about, particularly in the Middle Paleolithic, where you have this persistence hunting, which is this long, slow trot, like a jog of basically running an animal into overheating or exhaustion. This is not a sprint. This is more of a slow marathon. And it's not even a marathon because there isn't a finish line and you're not trying to get the fastest time. You're just trying to wear the animal down. And this relies on endurance capacities. So running, walking, jogging, slow level endurance. And one of the interesting things throughout all of these ideas is that anytime where the men have an advantage biologically, that's what's advertised all the time. You never hear the sorts of ways in which women have a physiological advantage. And it turns out endurance is one of those, especially like the long, slow slog endurance that is, you know, tens upon tens upon tens of miles kinds of thing. And estrogen turns out to be like one of the biggest key things here. It is the hormone that every body needs, no matter what your chromosomes, no matter what gametes you make, doesn't fucking matter. Everybody and everything needs estrogen. Estrogen predates sexual reproduction, which is why your nervous system, your cardiovascular system, your skeletal system, your muscular system, every system of your body responds to estrogen and needs estrogen to function. And at this point, I am firmly believe that estrogen is essential to life. But it gets ignored because it's not that fancy testosterone that apparently dominates us all. And so estrogen is actually critically important for fat burning. It will help shift the body's metabolism towards burning fat rather than carbohydrates. And fat burning is exactly what you want during endurance activity. You get more calories per gram of fat, 9 as opposed to 4 for carbohydrates. And it's a long, slow, steady burn. It's not like an up and down where you peak and you crash, you peak and you crash, if you think about sugar highs, for example. And so estrogen shifts the body's metabolism towards fat. And that's exactly what you want during long endurance activity. And women burn more fat on average than men at every level of activity and seemingly at rest. And a lot of it has to do with estrogen. Women also tend to have more type 1 muscle fibers than men do. And the type 1 muscle fibers are your like long, slow, steady endurance fibers. They are the ones that are not super powerful, but they also won't fatigue. Whereas the type 2 muscle fibers, which men tend to have more of, that's like your power, your sprint, doing something really quick, very powerful, but they burn out quickly and fatigue very quickly. And so those are two big ones. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on with hormones as well. But females do have this endurance advantage, and we are seeing that play out more and more in ultra endurance events, that females are winning with greater regularity than they had in the past as their participation increases, because there's been a huge number differential in participation for years and years and years. There's also potentially some psychological component to it, where women are better at pacing themselves, knowing like, right, I have this far to go. How fast should I be going along the way? Whereas men will be super, super fast in the beginning and then hit a wall and then aren't as good at finishing things out at the end. But that has not been fully tested yet, as a number of these things haven't. But female physiology seems very well suited for endurance activity. And I have an idea that it's actually related to pregnancy physiology as well, that you kind of get this endurance boost from underlying physiology that's been in place to have a successful pregnancy. But that's for
Now,
another day.
that's all fast. Oh my god! Oh, I have so many thoughts. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. Her last name is, I believe, Power. Who is the ultra marathoner who breastfed?
Sophie Power.
Sophie Power. That's it. Sophie Power.
Yeah, there's the
which is
picture
a great
of her
name.
breastfeeding the baby in the stands, and there's a dude passed out, like literally on his back next to her.
And it's an ultra marathon. Now, I don't know, Sarah, if you would feel comfortable answering this, but did you feel endurance? So the only person who here that has a child is Sarah. So I don't know. Did you feel like an extra endurance
I mean,
shift
it
during
is
pregnancy?
funny, like after like, giving birth months before and just like, nonstop breastfeeding. And my husband is like so tired. He's just complaining all the time. He's so tired. And I'm like, I am the one making all the food for the baby for my body. I'm the one that wakes up 4 times in the middle of the night to feed him. Like, what? And like, I guess I'm like a kind of tired, but no way to the level that he at least purports to be tired. So I don't know. Maybe it is just physiologically, I'm meant to do this and I can power through, or he just is, really good at complaining.
Oh, that's
What up, Zach?
I don't know. Maybe we need to do a little small scale study. I don't know. Very small sample size. Little anecdotal. Wow. No, my mom went back to work. Shout out to Janet if she's watching. My mom, Dr. Reagan, she went back to teaching like 2 weeks after she had me, something ridiculous. And I was like, I don't. And she taught up until I was born, and I was weeks late. You know what I mean? Like, I think they're just waiting for a baby to drop at any moment. I just don't understand. Yeah, in class, no less. Just like, and she taught health. I think she was teaching health sciences at that part. It would have been perfect. Let's go. Let's do this. But no, this is all, I mean, incredibly fascinating. I think, and do they assume that this pacing is more of a psychological, tactic, in which case we're psychologically perhaps better suited for such things?
That it might be this sort of like estimation, perhaps, none of it's conscious. I don't believe in any level that it's conscious, of just kind of understanding of how far you have to go and what it takes to get there. And, that would make sense kind of in an evolutionary way as well, with pregnancy and breastfeeding, that like, how active can I be while still making breast milk and still managing to get food and do all the other daily things that you have to do. As far as I know, that group has not done any sort of follow-up study. This was basically looking at existing marathon times, 10Ks and half marathons, to see how speed changed throughout each race, and that there was a sex differential between the two. And so, we're figuring it out. And could I add like 2 more things to this?
Please do.
Thank you.
Bring it. Yeah, I'm here for all of it.
Because I mean, again, I want to go to this strength thing as well. This idea that, females are inherently weaker, therefore can't do all of these tasks. Like, yes, again, I get that females on average have less upper body strength. Granted, they have more lower body strength relative to males in this case. But there's also tons of documentation of women being the ones to carry back the kills. And so we see this in high latitude populations in particular, where hunting is far more important because you don't have as much plant matter to actually sustain life. And they're the ones like pulling the sledges with a bunch of dead meat on it. It's, it's the women doing the really arduous tasks there. And another one is, this is a very relatively recent study. It was kind of an occupational therapy study, I believe in Canada. And it was in a factory where people were working on like these giant engines. And they had to like, screw these things and, wrench their arms all the time. And what few women were on the line doing that work were suffering a lot of shoulder injuries. And everyone thought it was just because, sad, weak women. And then somebody decided to actually study it. And it turned out it was because on average, women are shorter. So they had to have their arms up higher to do the wrenching on the large engines. And they looked into a little bit more, and they also found men who were below a certain height had the exact same problems and injury rate issues as the women. And so they basically just gave everybody longer wrenches, and it made everybody happy regardless of their height. And it had nothing to do with women's strength whatsoever, and it had everything just to do with height. And even the tall men preferred having the longer wrenches, and the shorter men preferred having the longer wrenches. And so this idea about strength and whatnot, like, at the extremes, there are differences, but on a functional level of doing the day-to-day, it doesn't.
Oh my, I wonder how many short men stayed quiet because, men don't like to complain about being hurt. And it wasn't until the women were like, hey, I'm hurt. Because they speak up, because they're like, hey, we got to find a solution for this. And then everyone freaking benefited because it was a height issue. Anyways, I just a little shout out to the ladies that's up. Yeah, So I want to hear about the archaeological evidence.
Well, and so Cara, just hearing you talk made me think, have we ever talked about the fact that like the Soviets thought that women were better snipers?
Yeah, but they also, like, the Soviets also put women in airplanes in World War II as well. Like, the Soviets were oddly progressive in some ways. Not that we should be pro-Russia at the moment, but they were oddly
You
progressive.
know, we can't hate them for everything.
Well,
That's really, I thought
just
they were better
started thinking about,
snipers.
like, laying there in the cold, and they thought because women were better at maintaining body heat and found it less unpleasant than male snipers, and so there was like this whole training. I was like, have we talked about that? So, like,
We totally
great
should.
example for another paper.
Natalia would hate that, laying in the cold.
I know. I would be the big wuss. I know. I was telling her it's 65 degrees here, and I'm like, put on the parka and the snow boots. I got to walk my dog a block.
Guys, I mean, moving to Philly now from LA. Oh my God, I miss LA.
Come visit. We miss you too. No, but it's when I lived in New York.
People, you weak
Seriously.
people.
And Kara's in Finland. But you must go crazy in Texas. See, that's the thing. Is like we know.
I was miserable in Texas during those summers. It was the worst thing ever.
You know, I don't thermoregulate well, so that's the thing. My hashtag for a while was "Don't hate, I can't thermoregulate," which is not a thing. It didn't catch on, anyways. But the archaeological record has so many interesting, I think. Even moving into like kind of the physiological aspect of like, reading about the injuries and the different, skeletal remains that we can look at to see, did women hunt back in the yesteryear?
It's so funny. So when we look at men and women of the past, right? So we've got skeletons that obviously are ambiguous. We have skeletons that we feel fairly confident are male and female, though I would add that like it's the traits that we're using to sex contemporary humans don't always work super well in Neanderthals. But anyway, right, we're assuming that we didn't just get all males or all females, that there's a diversity there.
Sure.
If we look at their skeletons, they all have the exact same traumas. Everyone's doing the same thing, right? Even though when you go into a museum and they've got the little dioramas, they've got the man with like a animal over his shoulder and a spear, and another man maybe cutting an animal up, and then in the back under the cave shelter we've got the female tending the fire. Maybe there's a baby. They're always like in the back. They're always doing something considered domestic, right? For some reason we decided leather processing is domestic, even though again we look at their teeth that they're using to like anchor leather. All individuals, males and females, have the exact same cuts on their teeth from accidentally knocking it with rocks as they're, processing leather. It's not like, oh, only ladies do that. So like when I get this feedback, people of like, well, no, it just doesn't make sense that women would have hunted. Then I'm like, okay, then I guess men didn't either, because if you look at their bodies, they're doing all the same things. If what the women are doing isn't hunting, then why do you think that the men are doing it? And I guess it is funny because you look at like the Homo erectus data that's been coming out now and arguing that like actually they didn't eat nearly as much meat as we used to think they did. But anyway, if we like stick to my beloved Neanderthals, a great example of Middle Paleolithic people living in temperate environments where like at least contemporary foragers do have like fairly high meat diets. When you live closer to the equator, people tend to eat more plant foods in general, but they're a great example, right? Not only do we see like the traumas on their body are basically all the same. We look in their grave goods, they're the same. There's not a whole lot of Neanderthal grave goods. As we get into the Upper Paleolithic with modern humans, again, no differences. Like certainly in the Neolithic, you have all these like hunting prestige items that get put in male burials that aren't in female burials, but we don't have that pattern in the Upper Paleolithic. I'm trying to think of like, we look at art. There's very few depictions even of people at all like there's actually very few hunting scenes, and the few hunting scenes there are, and I had to like go through all this Paleolithic art and find that there were like 3 on the planet.
Oh wow.
Have like if there's people in the like these are the 3 that actually had images of people, not just like an animal that was already speared, right? They all had like very like ungendered humanoid figures. They couldn't be assessed. So I will add, hilariously, when the University of Delaware did like a little press release about our papers, they like, made like a stock image to go with it. And they took like a fairly famous South African rock art of someone with a bow and arrow, and they put a ponytail on it. So just being silly, right? And I got like the angriest email from some dude who was like, and you are using a doctored photo, and like as if I like thought that someone hunting with a ponytail must be a woman, and I was tricked by a Photoshopper. I was like, no, that's just something that the PR office did because they thought it was cute.
Oh my God. Oh dear Lord. No, I actually used that image on the poster to promote this, but I even knew that wasn't a real image. Like what?
I'm a stupid lady. I can't tell the difference. I don't know anything about, rock art, considering that, I'm a Paleolithic archaeologist.
But also, Natalia, you need to understand how many experts there are in this exact specific area. Thousands of men are experts in this in the United States.
I know. Well, I wanted to ask you about, real quickly, I also wanted to ask what kind of traumas you were seeing on the bones, and
literally broken bones.
Yeah,
right? Like every single Neanderthal over the age of 25 that we have a fairly complete skeleton of has at least one heel broken bone.
Okay, because you guys didn't come up with the graphic about the similarities of Neanderthal and rodeo clown injuries.
No,
that's one of my favorites.
We have a shared advisor. So Eric Trinkus was like originally a staff advisor, and then I decided to go fully under him when I didn't want to do energetics anymore. And then Cara got adopted by him when her advisor went to a different institution. So we were both trained under Eric, and he had published that in the 80s, which is hilarious. He like went into the OSHA database and he was like, what occupations have traumas like Neanderthals? And it was, rodeo riders and rodeo clowns. And the problem was, instead of people interpreting that as like, oh, they both are in close proximity to angry, large mammals and therefore getting similar traumas, people were like, oh, they're jumping on their, a woolly rhinoceros's back and riding it, bucking across the tundra. So he ended up like retracting the paper because people just would not stop misinterpreting it.
Oh my God. I actually had a friend ask me, he was writing a TV show about whether or not Neanderthals would have ridden a woolly mammoth. And I think it's like highly, highly, highly unlikely.
Maybe once I find that leather saddle at a site, man, my will be set.
Yes. Oh man. So now I want to get into all the experts, the thousands of experts out there that told you what's what. Because you wrote an article for Scientific American, also called Woman the Hunter, and it's an excellent article. They posted it on Twitter, and then the men reacted. Do you have any favorite reactions? I have some of the tweets I can read. I don't want to give you any PTSD though.
Some of them, there were tweets, there were emails, there were phone calls, there was physical mail. And it was also probably one of the most engaged articles Scientific American had in a really long time. It got like 2.5 million views. It was like
most of theirs had like 20,000 views.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
that's
rage sells, Natalia. Rage sells.
No, that drives the algorithm. They say don't read the comments, but the comments, even the hateful ones, they keep you popular. So was there originally a paywall right with the article? So that was
for the American Anthropologist articles.
Oh, that was the one. Okay. Yeah.
And then Scientific American, like you get so many free articles a month or a year or whatever, and then you'd have to pay. But yeah, so one is we are to blame for the existence of women firefighters. That was a big one.
Well, DEI, man.
DEI. And then there's, are you fucking stupid? Just look at marathon times. I'm like, cool, you didn't read the paper. And there's the one thing that like Sarah always is like, oh, well, you can't believe any of the injuries and whatnot in this data. I'm like, okay, then you also can't believe men were hunting. If that's what you're going with, then you can't believe men were hunting either. But that doesn't work in their world. Sarah, do you remember some more that I just kind of blocked out?
Yeah, like the one person who printed off a bunch of articles about sex differences between males and females and then mailed them to us.
Without a return address, of course.
But my chair was worried it was going to be like an anthrax letter, right? That it was like, the Unabomber or something.
That is when I opened a police report with Notre Dame of like,
really
paper trail time, just in case.
Yeah, absolutely.
To that level, yeah.
Oh my,
That's
the emails that we got, and it's so funny because all of these people thought that they were like so smug, so clever, and we were just absolute nincompoops that they could so easily just like pwn with them writing out their intuitions about human evolution.
And that's the other thing is like we get accused of like, this is all about your feelings as women. This is not based in science. We're literally everything they are presenting to us because they are up in their own feelings about the thought of women hunting. Like
the
we're
triggered
emotional
nature.
ones here.
Have you
Yeah.
10,000 BC?
Like if there was even a moment of self-reflection, maybe they would get the irony of their absurd claims, but I don't think we can actually hope for that.
No, the amount of mansplaining and like lack of self-awareness is staggering. But also, I mean, I've been making science videos for different outlets for years, and I used to wake up for Discovery for D News, and I remember saying Neanderthals, and I just got ripped to shreds, like, for pages of, just dumb, but like, forget that it's a dumb, like you looked it up, they'd figure it out that that's actually the correct way in some cases to say it, unless you're an American. And
I
it just
remember
doesn't make any
being
sense.
a single lady in LA and going on a date with a guy who was an MD, and I said Neanderthal, and he corrected me. And then I went home and I was like, how many times does this word appear in my doctoral dissertation? The answer is 248.
But he knows better.
Oh my
But
God.
he's going to pronounce it, not me.
The penis always
wow.
knows better, Sarah.
Exactly. Yeah. We forget about the brain power of the ween. I'm going to just see here. Hold on. Let me, maybe you can, these are some tweets from responses from these very eloquent men. Some of
well
which
thought out.
They think they're comedians too. That's the other thing. You know what I mean? It's like they're scientific, literate comedians. Maybe you can indulge in a spot of alchemy while you're at it. Bunch of quacks. Let's see. Not only that, but it was women who went to war and men who got pregnant back then. Science is amazing. Well, it seems the Purple Hair Clan has colonized scientific America. Sarah, that must have been you.
Well, I did have purple hair for a while. Yeah. I know, this is hilarious.
Yeah,
there's evidence of people going to war in the Paleolithic at all.
Oh God. Yeah. No. Oh, and so more about the archaeological evidence too, because I watched a couple of your other interviews because when they came out, but also just because I was doing research, was just the idea of division of labor, because this idea that we're really dividing up what was done by male and female. And I just, to give a shout out to you guys, I did my burlesque debut back in October about the evolution of women and marginalized genders. And I came out as a chimpanzee. It was started 6 million years ago, and it was the evolution of women. And I left in vote pasties like one does. But at one point I created stone tools with your Women the Hunter, in the background. And I had, knocking rocks together to create a stone, just, again, this is
it's just so funny. Like, so much of the paper had to be like just actually breaking down the assumptions that were in other publications, like the idea that like constantly flit nappers are described with masculine pronouns, and the assumption that hunting tools were made by men, and then maybe processing tools were made by women was the only kind of like a concession they would give. Right? Even though, like, why would there be some sort of division? Like, you make a tool with the sharp edge on this side, and only you can make a tool with the sharp edge over here, right? Or like the ways of we get described for art, right? That all the artists were male. Or even this idea of creating like domestic spheres, like this is a male sphere of the site layout and a female sphere of the site layout, and so the female sphere of the site layout is around the hearth because clearly they must have been cooking. And again, like, there's no evidence for any of this. It's just the assumption of these authors who are not from the 50s, right? These publications are in the last 10 years. It's like
and what is the response? I know that there has been pushback from academics in our world of biological anthropology. What would you say to them, especially those that are saying you're overestimating the amount of hunting?
Well, one,
wouldn't
we
do.
never actually put a number to that estimate,
Well, right.
period, which is that, I mean, the strongest opposition comes from kind of the behavioral ecology sphere of people who look at modern day hunter-gatherers today and have even said and published, like, well, it's not like men are the ones that get pregnant and lactating. I'm like, well, fucking great. You tell any female creature anywhere ever that they're not allowed to get food while they're pregnant or lactating and see how that goes for a fucking species, friends. But it's also, you know, hunter-gatherers today are not representative hunter-gatherers in the past. Even still, we have plenty of examples of hunter-gatherers today with women hunting. The Agta, the Philippines, are maybe one of the best examples, of the at least well-studied example of that. And there's even a study within that group just demonstrating there's no difference in age at first menstruation, how many kids they have, age of first birth between women who choose to go hunting and those who don't. And so, this idea that women would not have been energetically capable of doing pregnancy and lactation and child rearing while also the rigors of hunting is just bullshit, because it literally has been done, literally is being done, and we see it. And
I was also 7 months pregnant when the Scientific American piece came out. So like all these people going after us being like, you forgot about the physiology of pregnancy. And I'm standing there like, I can't see my fucking toes. Like, you think I forgot?
Oh my God. See, I wish they could see this side, although they don't deserve it, honestly. But it's like this, truth is stranger than fiction, honestly, in this case. I mean,
yeah,
absolutely.
but I mean,
And also, yeah,
yeah. No, I mean, it just, I find it frustrating in some ways because it is a very narrow view. And it is also a view that views women as limited and, with an inherent handicap. And again, that would not have been possible in our evolutionary past. You couldn't just stop everything for 2 years while you're pregnant and lactating. You had to function, you had to move, you had to get food, you had to do all of these things. And as part of the archaeological evidence Sarah was talking about, in the Middle Paleolithic, people didn't live in large enough groups to rely on a sexual division of labor. Everyone had to contribute.
Well, and, and it's like you could argue, okay, well, your reconstructions of group size are estimations, right? But then you actually look at like the ethnographic evidence. You always hear these descriptions that in the Inuit, men hunt and women don't, until you actually go into the ethnography and then all these groups where, they're small group size. Well, this year, this man died and this other man was injured. And so all the women hunted that year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like no big deal. But of course, that's not part of the, that's not the narrative.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to code too. Like when you have these big ethnographic databases, it's hard to code those kinds of details. And especially like, in the northern latitude groups that Sarah was talking about, what if a family doesn't have a son? Guess what? They just fucking taught their daughter how to hunt. And she was the one who would go hunting. Like these stories are all there, but they don't make it into the narrative and they don't make it into the coding.
It just shows you how you have to be flexible, which seems like duh, right? If you want to be a species that survives, you have that is the power of being human, is how adaptable we are, how much we can just pick and choose different environments, different kinds of strategies, respond really well to environmental change, seasonal droughts, these things that happen, over multiple year cycles, which maybe is also why we have menopause, right? Keep women alive for a long time who know these things. It just drives me nuts that people actually want to really limit people in the past and be like, oh, somehow they were barely holding on to life and our species is only here through some sort of sheer luck. And it's actually that's the reason we're here, is because of that flexibility, because the fact that we used our brains to be able to survive as small groups at high latitudes and had a lot of flexibility as opposed to rigidity in roles.
Yeah, no, as a primatologist, I think about generalist species versus specialist species, and how specialist species are always kind of hanging on by a thread, when it comes to extinction, because they really don't exploit a lot of food options. So they've got, I studied spider monkeys. They love their fruit, whereas a howler monkey that eats leaves, they're fine. There's leaves on most trees. They're good. They're a dime a dozen. So yeah, there's a reason why humans are the most widely distributed primate on Earth. We are very adaptable, and we will make do with pretty much everything and anything. We will eat. I don't know. Go to a county fair, you'll see we will eat anything. anything. I met a man recently at a coffee shop who found out I was a primatologist and was very excited to tell me that he learned that male chimpanzees hunt in groups, and then they'll give, food to ladies who are ready to get down, and like, oh, look, this is a transactional thing. And he walked away before I could he also told me that women needed men because if technology goes away, we'll need them. But I didn't get to the part where I wanted to tell them that Jill Preetz's study that found that female chimpanzees in West Africa not only hunt, but they use tools to hunt. Oh, so again, not that we necessarily can use them as models for past human behavior because they've been on their own evolutionary trajectory, but come on, you know what I mean? It's perhaps it's not as sexy, for males to digest that and modern men to be like, oh yeah, there might be some equality, but
because somehow it's a threat. How is it a fucking threat? Why are people so threatened by this?
I don't know. You think they want the help?
Right. I think it's the way that men are feeling super threatened in the current political moment, and they want to be able to lean back on this idea that no, we are evolved for this. This stuff now is new and woke, and actually we are evolved to be rapey, according to someone like Andrew Tate, to be warlike, right? All of these things fit into this narrative. And it doesn't matter that there's no evidence for it. There's, a Hollywood movie or something that they can point to, right? Hit her over the head with a stick and drag her back to the cave by her hair. That's how it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's this. I've seen enough memes recently that have been shared with me about this this extinction burst of the patriarchy, like this last dying gasp of we're losing our stronghold.
It is a long gasp, unfortunately.
It won't. They just won't shut up with this gasp. I don't know. It's like, ugh. So yeah, I definitely feel like more things like this, at least getting more students out there. Which
yeah, for me in the classroom, it's become really important to make sure that I'm no longer perpetuating the idea of man and hunting the way I was taught. That's how I was taught classically as well, and realize I've been doing the same shit. So I actually taught a feminist human evolution class for the first time last spring, and so that was the sole focus of just the role of females within evolution and how important it is that we look at this aspect too.
I want to take that class.
It was a fun class.
That was great.
I got some of the guys in the class to volunteer to put a TENS unit on their stomach to simulate menstrual cramps. It was fantastic.
How did that go?
Not well.
Right?
I'd power 3 of 8. I had a couple bent over in half. So.
Oh my God. Do they have one that simulates childbirth? I feel like there is.
I don't think I can do that with
that might not be legal.
Yeah, I don't think I could do that with my TENS unit. It doesn't go that powerful. So.
Oh my goodness. Now, I feel like both of you have taught kind of experimental archaeology, or at least what is the term when you teach the I never did it, unfortunately, in my program, where you pretend like you're gonna go ahead and do some hunting.
It could be an experimental archaeology class. Yeah, right. I haven't actually got to teach one. I want to so badly. Conversation right now at Delaware with one of the archaeology faculty members that maybe we can do that going forward. But I know that Cara's got to have students go out and with an atlatl.
Yeah, I have an atlatl, traditional bow and arrow, a spear, and the shepherd's sling, which is unbelievably difficult to be accurate with. And I bought a 6-foot-tall Home Depot unicorn that I turned into a woolly rhinoceros. I can send pictures if you need.
Please do.
And we take it out
delicious
to the track and field practice area where they practice shot put and discus.
Is that right near Touchdown Jesus, or is it Touchdown Jesus?
No, it is not near Touchdown Jesus.
Damn
sadly.
it. Okay.
It is between the softball and baseball fields. But yeah, they get the atlatl and they get the bow and arrow and the sling, and they realize how fucking hard it is to be accurate with these weapons. And then they get pissed when I'm the best one among them, and I'll have athletes, I'll have baseball pitchers and football players, and they can't hit shit.
Because it's a skill. It's not about necessarily strength, right?
Exactly.
That's another. Yeah.
Well, that was the new paper that came out just a few months ago, right? The Atlatl paper where Randy Haas, who had just had a baby, had this thought of like, okay, you wear these babies strapped to you. Does that hinder your ability to use an Atlatl? And when they started testing it, actually increased the power they could generate with the Atlatl, right? Having like your center of gravity shifted and having this weight on your chest actually increased their Atlatl performance.
Oh, this is fantastic. I did not know this. Okay, I'm very excited to hear that because I don't know. Have you maybe Sarah? Could you test that out? Was that something?
I know. I was like, oh man, I wish you would have like let me be another data point for your study. But it was just like two faculty members who both had kids going out and doing it. But they were like, hey, wait, this is kind of cool. Like this helps support. They work in South America on the site where we have from about 10,000 years ago these burials of women with Atlatls, showing that like actually you could definitely hunt with an Atlatl with a baby strapped to you.
And this is in Peru, right?
Yeah, and that Randy Haas's group, they've also gotten a ton of backlash the way we have too. Like, oh, just because weapons are buried with women doesn't mean they were using them. Like, cool, then the men weren't using them either.
Yeah, then you can't. It reminds me of the bonobos. Bonobo females can't be dominant. They're just the males are just letting them think they're in charge. And I'm like, okay, by that logic, the male, chimpanzees, the ladies are just letting them think they're. It's like, what are we doing here? Like you can't. The double standard is rich, and I shut up.
It's
just
impressive.
Shut up.
Yeah.
It's really like I'm the mental gymnastics done to make it work.
My favorite thing has become like offering to meet with these people. Like, I've gotten into social media things or email things back and forth. I'm like, right, here are the articles, read them, and I will gladly have a Zoom meeting with you and discuss it. Guess how many have actually taken me up on that?
Zero.
A big fat zero.
Wow.
Well, like that we have to deal with like someone taking one article, like one sentence where we clarified like sex is not a binary and then moved on, taking that one sentence, then saying actually 99.9% or the average man is stronger than 99.9% of women. And then Elon Musk retweeted that. Of course, like that stat.
They literally whited out the sentences that came after it. They altered the article, the screenshot of the article, to make it seem like we don't acknowledge that men on average are stronger. I'm like,
oh my God.
Well, and then like it went from there, right? Bill Maher then would start talking about, saying, can you believe this? That Scientific American would do this, right? And then trying to get Neil deGrasse Tyson to jump on board, but he's like, I haven't read the article, I'm not going to say anything, right? And then Fox News responded with Bill Maher pwns Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I'm like, I can't even believe they put the word pwn in a headline on Fox.
Did he ever get back to you, or did I wanted to facilitate a Neil having you on the show because I'm like, this is a conversation that should happen because he's the platform.
No, we never heard back.
I will poke him again because he should have you on, honestly. I mean, this is something that needs to be discussed. And also just the way that men treat women that do science. Like this is something that we need to address. Like we don't think about that is just an added threat to your academic career that we don't think about. Men sort of saunter through life without a care in the world, and not all men, but, because I have to preface it by saying not all men, but, at the same time, like, women are subject to all sorts of vitriol and anger and, and women of color, even worse, this is something that needs to be discussed. And
it's the vitriol, the anger, and like the invisible work that we always end up having to do too.
Yes.
Well, and some people like tried to get us fired. I mean, like email.
Wait, what?
Like emailing department, like someone emailed my department chair. Like, can you believe what this person employed in your department is saying? I don't know what stuff.
Yes, we hired her.
Yeah, well, exactly. He's like, and I'm loving it. Look at all the media attention it's getting. Attention for University of Delaware. But think that like, they don't want to just like say we're stupid. Like they do actually want to have an impact on your life.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, so just because I want to acknowledge, let's see, somebody said Junior Jangles have, that's their username. Archaeologists found any cave paintings depicting gay Neanderthals. That's a sitcom I'd want to watch. Is there gay Neanderthal art?
Unfortunately,
I never thought
not that we're aware of.
I would love that.
I think part of it, I always try to remind people, is that like we may not be able to interpret gendered signals in some of this art, right? There's always this talk about like, oh, these vulvas everywhere, all everywhere, carvings of vulvas. there are like a lot of carvings that we look at and we see as vulvas, but that doesn't mean that they were interpreted that way. They also could be like, you know, upside down bird heads or hoof prints or something else, right? And we think, oh, a lot of these images are not gendered, the ones that are vaguely humanoid, but they may have to their intended audience been gendered. We just don't see them that way, right? In our minds, it's like, oh, it's got to have like a dick or boobs on it or a ponytail.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. No.
Males had their hair short, right?
Of course.
Right. Oh, wait. Because we all had
Nothing like
access to a barber.
That Paleolithic barber shop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Seriously.
You're
I
picturing
mean, look,
that right now.
I'm also like, if I let this go for a while, like the beard's coming in, guys, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't, you know, secondary sex characteristics, you know, be damned. Sometimes women get all sorts of things and men vice versa, you know what I mean? So like, I don't know. There's a lot of assumptions that are to be made. Oh yeah. I posted a link about today's show and somebody said, this sounds anti-trans. And I said, it's not, because yeah, I know. I think it was also,
It was like
I'm not 100% sure how legit, you know.
Well, our one sentence kind of just clarifying, like we're talking about just some biological sex indicators we can see in the past. We have no idea how these people identified. We have no idea how they constructed gender in the past. Just making that clarification is like the one sentence that like so many people latched onto and attacked us over without reading the article.
Oh yeah. And I've also written about including transgender athletes in sports very strongly in support of it. So happy to talk about that as well.
Yeah.
Because again, it comes back to these misconceptions about what male bodies are supposed to do and female bodies are supposed to do.
It's like testosterone's an amazing performance enhancing drug and everything else is like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I saw, did you mention that sometimes now people are taking estrogen as a performance enhancer, right?
Performance enhancing drug. Yeah.
Take
I
that.
I don't know if a test is actually like if the IOC has come up with a test for that or not, but estrogen has become something, especially helping with recovery. Estrogen seems to improve recovery post-exercise, this is also why women tend to recover faster from, say, heart attacks, because it helps with recovery. And they can also recover faster from traumatic brain injury. That is being discussed that estrogen should be available in emergency rooms to administer post these traumatic injuries because it can improve recovery.
Oh, wow.
It has not happened broadly in any way, but it's being suggested because people are, gasp, actually thinking estrogen is important. What the fuck?
Yeah, this is, I don't know. That's very controversial. You might want to think about your words.
I know. Interviewed my smooth lady brain can't handle it.
I've been meaning, I brought you all here to talk about that actually. No, I interviewed a urologist, Dr. Ashley Winter, and we talked about actual vaginal estrogen, excuse me, as a treatment for a lot of, things like UTIs and even like yeast infection, things that have been overprescribed antibiotics, and something like that can actually be, a treatment for something that is so common, across the board in women. So I don't know. I feel like estrogen has gotten a bad.
I am
rep.
every single person who is listening, watching right now, who could potentially go through menopause in their lifetime. Talk to your doctor about estrogen replacement therapy and hormone replacement therapy when you start entering perimenopause and menopause, because it can have really, really big benefits. There was the longest time where doctors were like, no, that's scary. It'll give you cancer instantly. And that has, of course, now been walked back majorly. So definitely have a conversation with your doctor about hormone replacement therapy, which has been available for men forever.
Yes. Okay, noted, because I'm heading into that territory.
I feel like we're all approaching that age where
Yes.
perimenopause is a reality.
Low T being this like culturally constructed disorder, right? Because if you look at foraging societies, young men have the same testosterone levels as older men in our industrial societies, and their T does decrease over time, but like, very, very little. And then, so really the weird people are young men in industrial societies with the crazy high testosterone. So yeah, of course, they do feel an effect, right, from that drop, but like something very weird's going on there. Like, why is testosterone so high in young men in industrialized societies? Probably, high carbohydrate diets, all sorts of other things going on, but like, because of that, we have this new thing constructed of low T, whereas like the T levels are normal, right? But they're obviously these set points are very much like, population specific.
I see. Oh, that's interesting. Also, another thing that really struck me was I was watching something where you talked about how sexual dimorphism, there's, you know, more so in industrial or like Western areas of the world versus like foraging groups. If you could talk a little bit about
Like,
that.
I mean, Europeans show some of the highest sexual dimorphism, both in like shape and size. So often, like so much of like, because I also teach forensic anthropology, when we think of like the sexing that goes on for skeletal remains, they're based off of European samples. And then you go back and you look at how often like male skulls from other populations get sexed as female,
Mm.
and like African, Asian, like all over the place, because they're having this really disproportionate physiological shape for the male skull in Europeans that then sets the idea of what a male skull should be, like the size of the supraorbital torus, the size of the mastoid, the level of angulation at the gonial part of the mandible. Like all of that is set by European standards that is not a global pattern.
Awesome. No, so that's something that I think having more, I mean, a better understanding of that, it would be incredibly helpful. I mean, excuse me, for years I thought, because being again primatology, I think chimpanzees are about males are about 30% bigger, and I knew that humans had much less sexual dimorphism, but I didn't even realize that within our species there was such a range of, like you said, like it's 8 to 15% about.
Yeah, it's like 15% in often in European populations, but in many other places of the world, it's much closer at the lower end of the range, 10 to
Yeah.
7%.
And just for the folks at home, in case I realized I asked that question without giving a little bit more context, sexual dimorphism is differences between sexes within a species, and that can include size differences, just body size. It also can be teeth shape and or teeth size and canine color differences or things of that sort. So, just a little, don't want to be too
Definitely, like
inside baseball.
we have like this trajectory towards less sexual size dimorphism, right? If we look at Australopithecines, they look more like chimpanzees. And so it's like
Mhm.
in the genus Homo, where there's been this shift towards much less sexual size dimorphism. And you could debate whether males got smaller or when females got bigger. I think generally the consensus from more recent papers is that females got bigger. But like, why was that difference decreasing? Well, probably because there weren't these strong patterns and different behavior and roles between males and females.
See? See? I just also want to address what's going on. Excuse me, there's a frog. Apparently, I've eaten a frog in my throat. What's going on, excuse me, in this administration um, in terms of NSF and NIH funding, even the words that are now being flagged, which include, I know, inclusion and
Yep.
inclusive and indigenous communities and women. Has that or will that affect your research? And how do you feel? You,
So,
you can cuss, you can curse.
oh,
Four-letter
yeah,
words are encouraged.
I will say this right now, Libs. I told you the story, Natalia, before we began, that the taxi ride in Rovaniemi, Finland, on the way to the airport to come back to the United States, literally the Finnish taxi driver said, "What the fuck is wrong with Trump?" And I'm like, buddy, this taxi ride is not long enough to get through all of it. Anyway, so I am very fortunate in that the current NSF grant that is paying for all the work in Finland is old enough that it didn't get that like whatever review from is going on. Uh, Going forward, I have no idea where money is going to come from because I know that federal money is not, and as far as I know, NSF Biological Anthropology has not moved forward with any of the reviews of grants that were supposed to be reviewed this past winter. So I don't know where money is going to come from. We'll have to be looking at private institutions and private grants to keep things going. I also just got word that Fulbright funding is being suspended, and which I didn't realize that was something that could be under the purview. But also, I just want to highlight how fucking stupid and clumsy this effort has been. For example, and I am not condoning any of this, but I want to just demonstrate how fucking idiotic these people are. The word trans is flagged. The word trans, because they're all against transgender individuals, because let's just, ignore that people exist. But the word trans is also for trans fatty acids, the trans versus cis form of molecules that biochemists study. All of those grants got flagged and got all of these warnings because these idiots don't even know what the fuck they're reading, because I don't even think they have a basic science education to understand any of it, much less thinking they could define what sex is.
Well, and inclusion
Yes.
and bias are mathematical terms, right? Like,
Yeah.
but inclusion and bias are on the list of no words. So is female,
Right?
just female, right?
It's nuts.
But
Institutions,
all about
institutional.
protecting women, and isn't it Trump saying that I'm here to protect women? They're going to be protected so well,
whether they want to be protected or not.
whether
But
Trauma victim.
You know, it's so funny.
Systematic.
And if you look at the NSF Biological Anthropology Directorate, its budget was only $1.2 million a year to begin with.
It's nothing.
$1.2 million a year? Yeah, it's fucking nothing. It's nothing, right? In the grand scheme. Like, how is this saving any money?
None of the cuts are saving any money. It's going to cost lives, is what it's going to do. And it's going to cost generations of research in this country. We have already been falling behind in terms of science and innovation, and now it's completely gone.
But my concern really is that it's not just, oh, the US is going to fall behind. Like, it's going to be it's a global impact, because it's not like, oh, we could just move to Europe and do it there. Right? Yeah. It's chronically underfunded there. It's not like there's jobs. It's not like, the Netherlands and Austria are just like so eager to scoop us up.
They don't have the jobs. Like, when I think about my work in Finland, like, grants are much more limited in Europe than they have been in the United States. Like, they want research to happen and they want to collaborate and they want to do these things, but now we are breaking down and ruining every friendship and collaboration we had internationally. And this is going to have repercussions for decades.
God, it's like, not only do you have to go fund your hospital stay, but just even the research to save you. You know, I mean, that's what we're getting. That's what we're getting to. Just crowdfund everything.
Yeah,
with what money?
Got my GoFundMe for my my next research project.
Seriously, I mean, that's what we're looking at, and that's what it's sick, and it's also, again, just a war on things that they don't understand. I mean, the fact that they try to define sex, we're only going to identify sex
female, by the way, based on
we're all female. Every man is a trans man, guys. That's what we got.
But we can't use the word female, so who knows what we should say.
Wow. Well, I want to talk about your current research, because you guys, moving forward, you're doing wonderful work that has, implications for current, populations around the world. So, again, am I going to Rochambeau? Who wants to go first? I feel like this is Sophie's choice.
Yeah, I'll talk out. So right before COVID started, I was actually trying to pivot to looking at respiratory health in early humans. Which seemed obviously really well timed for COVID, but that also meant like no international travel. So all those things kind of got paused. And then I ended up becoming an administrator at California State University, Dominguez Hills. So I wasn't in the classroom or doing research. So now I moved to the University of Delaware to go back to having a research position, but I have to get tenure again. So we could travel. So it's great, re-resurrecting this work, attempting to look at evidence of respiratory health in past populations, because, again, we have these fantasies of like how healthy people were in the past, right? You just eat a paleo diet and you run around in the clear mountain air and then everything must have been great. But if you're the kinds of shelters people are building, living in rock shelters, I assume they're actually probably being exposed to quite a bit of smoke inhalation. Though also in some areas, wildfires also would have been an issue. And I want to see if, what we can reconstruct, because I know that we have tons of periodontal disease in the late Pleistocene. And why were they having all this periodontal disease? Right? It could be lots of things, but I think respiratory health issues might be part of that, because certainly periodontal disease is associated with respiratory disease in living humans. So let's see what we can find. So I'm doing kind of a methodological study on contemporary people where we have medical records this summer. And if I can then kind of like have that little proof of concept with the methodology, then go and apply it to Neanderthals.
Oh, that's so exciting. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, I just think of the wildfires here in Los Angeles. It's not long enough exposure, but whew.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about your work, Sarah. In Finland, we have a wood fire sauna at the house that we rent. And like the night after using it and the morning after, like I blow black junk out of my nose just from the smoke. And that thing has a chimney and like good ventilation and everything. And still you get so much in. But totally worth it.
God.
I'll
No,
also put it in
love
a
my wood fire sauna.
sinus.
Yeah, just stick things up because of COVID. I'm so used to things being shoved up my nose. So it'll be fine.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, wow. Well, so Cara, what do you got going on? I know that you have a
There's
lot of
always like a
yeah.
million little things going on, but my work in Finland's the big focus right now. So I'm actually on sabbatical all this year, and over the course of 10 months, 6 months are being spent in Finland, and I just finished up another 2 month stint in Finland. And so there are a couple of big overarching questions with that project. And one is just your kind of basic biological anthropology, cold climate adaptations. And the things I'm most interested in are resting metabolism and brown adipose tissue. And for folks at home, brown fat or brown adipose tissue is the kind of fat that burns only to keep you warm. It is hibernating bears have a shit ton of this fat, and that's what keeps them warm when they're hibernating. And so you can't burn this fat off by, running a mile or anything. You burn it when you're mildly cold exposed. And so curious how reindeer herders, so people who herd reindeer for a living and they're outside a lot, compared to indoor workers in the same region, what their differences in metabolism are, what their differences in brown adipose tissue activity are, and then also how this relates to a number of kind of cardiometabolic biomarkers, because there is some suggestion that brown fat is actually quite beneficial in being able to lower blood glucose and even lipid levels as well. And so people have been targeting it as this like silver bullet to obesity, which there's no silver bullet to anything, everybody. Somebody says that, they're selling you something. And it's bullshit.
They're selling you Ozempic.
I mean, Ozempic does have very clear like health benefits and implications for certain things, but we also do not know the long-term effects of those drugs, and it terrifies me to think about what it's doing to your thyroid. But that's pure speculation on my part. Just
hopefully
theoretically
not.
wondering
Hopefully
what's
it's fine,
going on.
but yeah.
Anyway, so that's been a part of it. It's just kind of trying to understand the physiological cold climate adaptations, and especially with brown fat, because we're seeing lots of variation from Russian populations to a Samoan population of how that brown fat works, and we don't know why it's so different from population to population. But then the other big part of it is, the Arctic has experienced climate change faster and more acutely than other parts of the world. And so these are populations in transition. And so, as I was saying before, in February, 300 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle, people, in Finland, I experienced negative 33 degrees Fahrenheit, and 4 days later, positive 42 degrees Fahrenheit. It should never have that kind of swing. It should not get above freezing that time of year in Finland. And I experienced more days above freezing than I did days below. And this is going to have a dramatic impact on health, and likely already has. And so we're doing a bunch of health assessments as well with the folks that we work with, looking at blood glucose, glycosylated hemoglobin, blood pressure. We're doing ECGs, arterial pulse wave measurements, and then we're looking at thyroid hormones, vitamin D, this whole suite to try to understand what could be going on with the health in this population. Because at least previously, and even some of our earlier data shows that the reindeer herders in particular, 75% of them are overweight or have obesity, but their cholesterol levels look good, their glucose levels look good. And so they have this metabolically healthy obese phenotype. And I've been theorizing that this could be related to cold climate adaptations, that it is beneficial to have more fat in a cold climate. And it's beneficial to be able to rely on fat as a fuel, because you can get that from animal sources much easier when you're that far north. But that could be changing. This phenotype that could have been beneficial in cold might now be detrimental as temperatures are drastically increasing every single year. And so this is a 3-year study, and we're about to finish up the first year soon. And then I'm going to have students take over once my sabbatical is done. And we're getting seasonal measurements to see how things are changing from season to season. And then with 3 different cohorts of people.
Oh, that is awesome.
It's fucking great.
Oh man, I just think
I love Finland.
I've never, my mom actually went to Finland years and years ago and absolutely loved it. So I bet one day, I don't know, actually, maybe, how is Finland during summer? Is it, how warm
How
is
are
it?
you with mosquitoes?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm
Oh,
fine.
well
I'm
then
good.
go to Finland in summer because
I work in
I
the
am
tropics, you know?
you're good. I am
Yeah.
dreading the spring summer session because of the polar sun. No, I can't deal with that.
Oh,
I
that's
can't
hot.
deal with
It's for
midnight
very,
sunshine
yeah.
and the mosquitoes. I'm going to be miserable.
Oh man. Well, I think of just like I mean, and I don't know where it's at right now. This is, I'm going back to, maybe when I was studying like the whole thrifty genome, this idea of, Samoans, for
Mm.
example, that, because of these long,
Mhm.
oceanic voyages, they would have had, being heavier would benefit them to survive
Mhm.
on the sea for like, because I don't, was it Richard Bribiescus that was doing that research, I believe?
Nikki Howley was doing it, and
Yeah.
Steve McGarvey was
Okay.
the other big one
Yeah.
doing it as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my
A
graduate
similar
student,
idea.
yeah,
Uh,
Alexandra Niclou, who was my
yeah.
graduate student, so she studied brown fat in the Samoan population with that population Nikki Howley and McGarvey worked with, and she found brown fat in a tropical population, which you would not typically expect. So we think it's probably a pretty deeply ancient uh sort of human feature, because even in hot environments there's often really drastic differences between daytime and nighttime temperature, and brown
Yeah.
fat could have been crucial for maintaining body temperature at night. But the Samoans are really interesting, at least in that population. Their brown fat used glucose and fatty acids when burning, but in Finland our population seems to prefer mostly fatty acids, and
Wow.
in
Huh.
Russia they seem to prefer glucose. Again, this is not a conscious decision here, but
You
the
mean
brown
vodka?
exactly,
Sorry.
vodka. The potatoes will feed the brown fat.
There you go.
But yeah, so there's lots of variation, and we don't understand
Yeah.
at this point
Yeah.
so many things.
I do have a question. I think this would be best suited for Sarah.
Mhm.
Junior Jangles asked, did you find any evidence that Neanderthals had a barter system or had any kind of religious practices at all?
I don't know anything about anyone arguing for a barter system. Religious practices, I mean, we go back to like the really classic one being like burying with flowers from Shanidar, but then that's been, kind of debunked with the argument that actually all the flower pollen found in the soil was because of gerbils putting flowers down into their little gerbil holes in the
Those
cookie,
fucking gerbils.
Gerbil!
right?
Don't they think they now started the bubonic plague? I feel like gerbils, just through history, have been
Yeah.
screwing shit up.
And there's so many of these burials that were excavated at a time period where like we don't necessarily always trust the excavator. So like Teshik Tosh was allegedly buried in a ring of ibex horns. That sounds pretty cool, right? But like then there's other people who are like, well, we have no proof of that. It's just like one guy's drawing, you know. It was Uzbekistan behind the Iron Curtain, and nothing was ever published in English until the 90s, and it's all just like reproductions of drawings. So like, yeah, maybe there's some stuff with religious practice. Obviously, they're making cave art. We know that they're decorating their bodies with shells, with bird feathers, um, some sort of makeup, right? Like animal
Ooh.
fat mixed with charcoal. Does that all have just as it attractive and not have a religious component? We don't know, but it certainly could be part of religious practice.
Oh, yeah. No, I always thought it was pretty well. What was it? The eagle's talons, the one necklace that was found. That's very metal. I just feel
Yeah,
like it's
yeah. Well, that's why my book that I'm working on right now is called
ooh.
Paleopunk, on the prehistoric origins
Tell
of
us more.
piercing and leopard print. Yeah, exactly. I also love leopard print. I think it's just because like Peg Bundy was like my idea of femininity as a child, which is why I had like bright red hair for so long. Or maybe like female gremlin more was
Yes.
femininity. Shout out to the Gremlins 2. So much better than Gremlins 1. Yeah, I'm working on a book called Paleopunk, Prehistoric Origins of Tattoos, Piercing, and Leopard Print. I hope a publisher will pick it up. But that's, we're talking about some of the really cool metal things that Neanderthals did. And, they're piercing not just Neanderthals, humans across the planet in the past, but piercing their cheeks with labrettes, wearing leopard print capes, or leopard capes, right? putting, eagle feathers in their hair, all sorts of fun stuff.
Oh, you're speaking my language. That right there is my Burning Man look. You know what I mean? I think
Oh,
you just
well,
described it to a T. Yeah.
that's
No,
cute.
didn't they actually, I think one of the, advisors on my thesis committee was on this paper about, making, Neanderthals making tools with the bones of other Neanderthals and possibly humans. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty metal. That's really, I mean, like, where'd grandpa go? He's right here. Let me cut your steak, you know?
Too, right? Like the Sungir site, Sungir 4 is just a piece of human femur that's been stuffed with red ochre and looks like some sort of like wand that was buried with 2 children. I mean, that's number 4. Yeah, sure. I mean, we definitely have like, the skull caps that, look like they were being used as cups. I mean, it does make a nice cup. I'm totally
I
gonna
would totally eat my cereal out of a skull cap. If
I
could.
would absolutely. That would, yeah, no. I remember they thought it was a Bigfoot. There was I think it was was it a goat scrote? It was either a skull cap or a goat scrote. I know that it's crazy that I can't remember that I'm confusing the two, but they thought it was a Bigfoot skull cap. I think it was a goat scrote, and it was just like hardened, and that was found, and they're like, this could be it, and then it was like, no, that's not that at all. But it was just like a I don't know.
I'm gonna
Ignore
make
that.
sure to have the term goat scrote somewhere in the book proposal.
Hashtag goat scrote. And
Goat
we need
scrote.
T-shirts, by the way.
Goat scrote. I'd rather be drinking a beer out of a goat scrote. Yes, that's what I'd rather be doing. I want to actually ask about some of your extracurricular activities because, Cara, you have an amazing podcast, The Sausage of Science. So I also want to shout out, you won the Outreach Award at the for the American Association of Biological Anthropologists in 2023. So I want people to listen to your podcast, also hosted by.
I mean, it's not my podcast, so I want to be careful. It's the Human Biology Association podcast, and because I've been on sabbatical, I don't think I've done an interview for months and months. So I've been like, I also am slowly trying to step away from it to let the younger generations get their voices out there, because I'm now becoming quickly old guard, believe it or not. So
someone's got to teach them.
I know, right? Let the babies fly, leave the nest. So yeah, I do the Sausage of Science with the Human Biology Association, and now that I'm back in town, I might do 1 or 2. But I've done science communication workshops, which are a lot of fun. I'm working on a book as well, and that's
What's
called
that about?
That's called That's What She Said: The Story of Woman Evolution. And it is under contract, and I'm majorly working on edits as we speak. And it's basically that feminist human evolution course that I mentioned. It's going to be in book form, of talking about the ways we need to think about women, female, within this evolutionary context, and how they were likely the ones driving evolution in many ways, and not this man the hunter thing. So that I'm working on as well. What else? I don't know. I feel there's so many things.
You just got back from Finland. I don't know how you have the strength right now.
Finland. I don't even want to show you the to-do list that I plowed through this morning, so I can collapse at like 6 p.m. tonight and be done.
Oh my God. Is it like a wee scroll that just kind of keeps rolling out?
It really is, actually. It just keeps unfolding more and more. But yeah, I've always, at least in the past, I have felt very strongly about science communication and outreach. And I've got to say, current climate makes me feel less and less hopeful that it makes a difference. I'm not going to lie that I feel pessimistic that, the people who are listening are the ones who are already interested in opening to listening. And sadly, those are not the ones we need to reach. And we have to figure out new ways to reach the people that are super, super skeptical of what it is we do and don't fully understand it, but would like to try to.
Right. I had Dr. Amanda Townley on for the first episode of the show. Yeah. And I watched her go toe to toe with a creationist in a New York dive bar and just eviscerate him and his beliefs, but in the nicest, most concise and effective way. And I was like, because, she's from Alabama and she's so good. But we talked about, she said, radical empathy, like the people that we just want to grit our teeth and we don't know if we can talk to them, try to show some empathy, which is, if it's a troll, obviously, there's only so much you can do with a troll, but it's tough. I don't know. That's a tough one. I know we're getting, long on time, and I want to respect you. your time, and I very much appreciate you being here. But I also know that you're great mentors, and you've talked, I know I've interviewed Sarah about, your mentorship through the years, mentoring other folks. And Cara, I know you wrote a paper as well about mentorship. If you want to talk about how you would encourage somebody, especially, another woman or non-binary or somebody, identifying not as maybe as, I mean, if they are a cis man, that's fine too. But like, how would you encourage somebody to get into our field?
Reach out to us. We freaking love responding to people who are excited, enthusiastic, and curious. Like, please email us. We'll send you papers. We'll plug you into our networks. We'll introduce you to people. We are way more friendly, despite the number of F-bombs I've dropped and rage I have demonstrated. Both Sarah and I are very friendly and open people. Drop us a line. We are more than happy to help. We've had people help bring us up. And so it's a real privilege and pleasure to, reach down and lift somebody else up along with us.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of teaching if you're just going to be like, shut the door behind you? Like, the whole point, right, is to be able to train the next generation. And I'm not at an institution that has a graduate program, so I really just focus like on undergraduates and helping place them into PhD programs. And I've actually only been in institutions that didn't have graduate programs. And it's so fun, like, to watch your students go off and like do cool stuff and become experts on things and like teach me new stuff. And yeah, it's just amazing. So I know people's parents tell them they can't get jobs in anthropology. Okay, maybe that's true for a lot of people, but clearly some of us get jobs. So like, if you're like, the advice I got in undergrad from that amazing Neanderthal professor, Trent Holiday, was, well, like, if you're willing to be the best at it, then do it. Like, you will find a job if you're willing to be the best. And you know what? He's right. Like, I'm on my third tenure track job, so somebody gets jobs. Kara's also on her third tenure track job.
Tenured.
Yeah.
Done and tenured.
Oh yeah. You're tenured. Yeah.
And the other
say what I want.
I was.
That's got to be me. But the other thing I want to, if anyone's thinking of applying, if you're at the stage of applying to PhD programs, not only reach out to the advisor you're interested in working with, but reach out to their current and former students, because they will give you the details about what that person is like as an advisor. And if there are any fucking red flags, you need to be very, very aware of it, because if it even seeps through in those conversations, it's going to be much worse in person. And even when you reach out, when I just say, like, email Sarah, email me, email whoever, if they respond, and depending on how they respond, that's a good sign. And if people don't respond, it is entirely possible the email got lost, but that might also be that that's just not somebody who's, open to being a mentor. So those are my bits of advice. Talk to people, contact people, get a broad base of stories.
We're not celebrities. We're really excited for you to ask a question.
Please talk to us. Oh my goodness.
I beg to differ. You're celebrities in my world. I'm just like, no, I remember when I met you both. I was so I mean, I don't know. I think I met Sarah at like the 2011 AABAs.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And I can't remember.
Does that sound right?
Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Minneapolis. I remember Minneapolis.
Yes, yeah. And I think that, but I remember the Wash U crew. I was so like, I just thought you were the coolest crew of like anthros coming up. And woo, yeah. And then you all have gone on to do amazing things. And I love seeing the mentorship that you've, carried on, so that's very important. And speaking of finding you and reaching you and, where can people follow you? Where can, where do you feel is a safe place to go?
Well, I mean, here I am on Blue Sky, and it's at Cara Ocobock or whatever version of that, because that's easy. But I have literally just deleted my Facebook app and Twitter app and Threads app, because fuck giving those people money. Not that I was paying them, but I don't even want them tracking activity. But also email me, which is cocobock@nd.edu.
Yeah, same here. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm still addicted to Instagram. I apologize, but I am not active on Facebook or Twitter. Do not have those apps on my phone. Shoot me an email. I'm very friendly. SALACY@udel.edu.
Awesome. Oh my goodness, you guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Um,
you.
seriously, this is I don't know. I would when I heard about the Bill Maher episode, I was like, oh, more people need to know about the actual science of all of this rather than just people who didn't read the article, got mad at the headline, and kind of
Or
spouted
mad at
off.
the altered screenshot.
Oh my God, that is crazy. So wait, hold on. You said that Musk actually tweeted that?
He retweeted
He
someone else's.
retweeted it. Yeah, he retweeted
Yeah.
someone else's. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet purple Jeebus, that is just what is happening. I don't understand why people
Yeah.
think that's, an okay thing to do. So,
Well, because he is the biggest purveyor of misinformation on his own fucking site and has changed the AI so it no longer lists him as the biggest purveyor of misinformation.
oh God, it's so yeah. I'm
But,
still on there, but
we're the untrustworthy ones, clearly.
right. No, yeah, exactly. Not peer reviewed or anything of that sort. That's oh my goodness. No, yeah, it's a time right now. What would it say? We are living in interesting, albeit
Yeah. Well, we used to have
mildly terrifying times.
interesting times. It's usually kind of an insult, but
Yes. Right. I'm like, this is not good. They're not the interesting times I want. Do you have any, because I always like to make sure that you would get all the things you would like to get out there. Is there anything else you would like to say to the world while you have my small stage?
Like, yeah, I don't know, like big words of wisdom of like, have conversations with people. Stop with the damn hot takes and just sit down and have an actual conversation.
That's good. I like that.
yeah.
Sorry, go on.
I was just saying what I said earlier. Hey, any book publishers, pick up my. I've got a book proposal. I'm ready to shop it.
Do you have an agent?
No, I don't. I was actually talking to
Okay.
Jennifer Raff, who has her
Yes.
book about her agent. But yeah, that's the next step. I don't know if I've got the pull yet for that, but trying.
I'm gonna think because I have. Okay.
I followed Cara's footsteps. So I taught a class based off the book proposal. Students loved it. Got great feedback. Already got the cover. I actually already have the follow-up book in my head, which would be the paleo parenting book, because that's like a trendy thing now. But like, I actually have my sample size of 1 with my baby, so I'm testing out plenty of paleo parenting actually on him, and things have generally been going well.
How's your addle throwing skills with the
That's
with
the
the
one
baby?
I haven't done, but
it's frowned upon in Philly to just, go down the street and throw addles at someone.
Yeah, but I don't see why not.
Philadelphia woman seen throwing weird stick while baby attached.
First, the thing.
No. Actually, I feel like that's in Citizen app.
Especially after the Eagles win the Super Bowl. Levels are going everywhere.
Just make sure you're wearing green. It would be fine.
Right? Who amongst us hasn't, strapped on a baby and thrown some addles after a Super Bowl win, right? I mean, that just seems par for the course. I forget. I always forget to ask this dumb question, but what is the filthiest thing you've done in the name of science?
Doofiest thing?
Filthiest. To go with the show. Survival of the
I
Filthiest.
had to transport orangutan urine across state lines, and I got pulled over for speeding, and I had to explain why I had a cooler full of ape piss in my car. That happened.
Did they buy it? I mean, not literally buy it. That would be weird.
Oh God, I couldn't sell that. I'd be weird.
Priceless.
I mean, yeah, it would be. No, he totally, and he let me off. Let me off without a ticket, because that was one of those where the truth was stranger than any lie I could possibly make up.
God. You could say it was orangutan.
Orangutan.
That was terrible. Orangutan. Sarah, what's the filthiest thing you've ever done in the name of science?
Filthiest, I have actually pumped breast milk in an archaeological site. I've got great pictures of me just like strapped on, standing there in a lot of back guano, just trying to increase the baby's microbiome. That might count.
That does count. Absolutely. And I don't know. We need photographic evidence of that one for sure.
And I'm sure both Sarah and I have probably gone like a week or longer without showering based on
Oh, yeah.
field work. Yeah, like just
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about dirty. Like we've all had to deal with that.
I mean, I actually
That-
had to like hitchhike after that. Like the vehicle breaks down, you're fucking filthy on the side of the highway in Kenya. Like, please pick me up.
I had to ride a horse, not having showered or bathed for 2 weeks down a fucking mountain.
Wow. Was the horse offended by your stank, or did they
My guess
seem
is
like
the stink just blended the horse stink and my stink to
Oh,
create an
yeah.
unholy combination of stench power.
would that either attract or deter predators? I wonder.
It might attract a Bigfoot.
It might attract a Bigfoot. Oh, they would. Yeah,
There it is.
That's
There
what.
it is.
That's how you. Wow. Well, thank you. Oh my God, this was great. This was. I'm very glad I asked the filthy question because we
You
gotta
never
do
know what
that.
those answers are going to be.
I have gotten some interesting ones. There
Oh,
are
I'm
some
sure.
things people, I'm sure, there's, people get real literal with it. I'm okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Cara Ocobock and Dr. Cara Lacy. And thank you for tackling a topic that shouldn't be this controversial, but because of reinforced gender roles, it somehow is. So you have kind of shifted the focus and definitely inspired other academics to do so, and hopefully will continue to do so. And I want to thank my producer, Dr. Peter, you're now a doctor, Dr. Peter DeTucker, for making this show possible. And here's a quick reminder to like, subscribe, and comment if you like the show. And if you want to support the production of the show and my other SciComm work, you can maybe join my Patreon if you would like. And next week, I'm talking to the California director of the Wildlife Federation, Beth Pratt. She's coming back, and we're going to be talking about protecting our national parks in the wake of all these terrible layoffs. So tune in March 11th at 12 p.m. Pacific time. And now I want to thank my amazing Patreons. I love you guys. You're the best. You're so good. Okay, Patreons. Let me get there. Okay. First, we got David Wynn, Claude Allen, Simply Tom, Skullbeard, Tori Yates Orr, Redding Maley, Dana Logan, Michael Z. Weinstock, David Leitner, James Hutspeth, Anthony Zana, Tom Berman, Jen Beverstock, Scott Froschauer, JSB, Jeff Cohen, Andrea Bloom, and Jonathan Marks.
We know that guy.
We know that guy. He's retiring this year. But anyways,
Good for him.
yeah. So thank you, everybody, and tune in next week. It's going to be a good one. So next March 11th at 12 p.m. Pacific time, Beth Pratt. Okay. Until next time, stay filthy.